I would like to talk to you all about the future, because there needs to be a future, there needs to be a different future, because among the many, many uncertainties that we have one certainty. And that's actually, we have two certainties. The first certainty is that pandemics happen. They happen. Okay. The average interval of the emergence of a pandemic virus is between 11 and 40 years. So in your lifetime, you are going to see at least two pandemics. Most of us in this room have seen many more than that. Okay, that's certainty number one. Certainty number two is that we will not be able as a society, as a species, to survive another pandemic like this one. And what is the main difference between this one and the previous pandemics of the virological era that we know about? Is that in this case, there is zero antibodies. And that's why the virus is going so fast. For all the previous influenza pandemics, except for the Asian flu, which there's a bit of debate about it, there always was some residual antibodies. And so the virus could only go at the speed it could go. But now we know that pandemics caused by unknown viruses happen. And that perfect storm of animals, humans, filth, and movement that can ignite a pandemic are successful and have been successful. They're hardly ever successful, okay? These spillovers happen quite often. But when they are successful in becoming widespread, then they create enormous problems. And this is the point I want to make. The 2020 pandemic is not just a pandemic. It is a major stressor for multiple systems in which we operate. Some of these have collapsed. And I am not referring only to healthcare. I am referring to a series of other systems. What this pandemic is screaming in our face, is that, hey, you know what? We live in a closed environment. The world, the planet, is not an open system. And therefore, we are entirely dependent from what happens in animals on the other side of the planet. And if you look at this with a broader and more modern outlook, I think that we can say that as Homo sapiens, which is our species, we are entirely dependent from the plants. Also, they are 80% of our diet, from the animals, and of course from the environment, but also from water, also from air. And so here I come to my point, which is that this pandemic is the most measured event in history. We know everything about this pandemic. We know the temperature of all the people that were hospitalized 3 times a day. We have all those values. We have mobility data. We have weather data. We have all the data we need. And therefore, I think that this pandemic is a turning point for us to finally do what we needed to do, and that we've just been kicking the can in the long grass. Health as a system. Health does not only pertain to humans. Health is a value of a system which encompasses plants, animals, and the environment. And how can we look at this as a system? Well, we have the data. All we need to do is start looking at data that is being generated by many sources worldwide, harmonize it, clean it up, and look at new trends. We need to be brave innovators. We need to look at a new future, trying to imagine that future different from the future, from what we had before the pandemic. The pandemic is is a transformational event. There will be a before the pandemic and an after the pandemic. I am hoping that after the pandemic, we will not talk about human health anymore as an independent silo. I am hoping that after the pandemic, we will talk about the natural expansion of the One Health concept that many of you know about, which is circular health. Why? Because health, there is no economy without health. And so we need to put health at the center, and we need to apply that same type of thinking that we use for economy. So circular economy, things need to add up. And in exactly in the same way, we need to make things add up in health. And so I am inviting you to use this tragic event, which carries destructive energy, but also carries generative energy. It does, because we will have to reinvent some of those systems that have collapsed. These include agricultural, these include mobility, these include healthcare. Many, many systems need to be readapted. Please keep in mind this concept of circular health and of how circular health can actually be the perfect springboard for us to work towards those sustainable development goals